bell had long since echoed through the sterile hallways of Westland High, but Raymond Harold didn't stick around for the noise and nostalgia. He slipped out quietly, head down, blue hoodie pulled over his short-cropped hair. His denim jeans were worn but clean, cuffed just slightly above his black sneakers, which moved with the grace of a runner and the weight distribution of a trained fighter. Despite his modest 165-pound frame, Raymond's body held a deceptive power, a lifetime of swimming, sprinting, and martial arts carved into every muscle fiber. The streets of his neighborhood felt washed out in the gray light. Uniform houses sat quietly behind short, squared hedges, most with beige siding or sun-faded brick. Driveways were mostly empty this time of day, except for the occasional family sedan or aging SUV. Mailboxes leaned slightly like they were tired of standing. The street lamps, tall, thin, and silver, lined the sidewalks like quiet sentries, not yet needed in the fading daylight. The only motion came from windblown plastic bags drifting like ghosts across cracked pavement. It was the kind of neighborhood where the quiet wasn't peaceful, it was stagnant. Every yard looked the same, well-maintained but lifeless. No kids played outside anymore. No one greeted anyone unless they had to. It was a place built to be safe, but it had no soul. The overcast sky mirrored the past few months of Raymond's life, gray, quiet, and strangely hollow. School had become a flat loop of monotony: wake up, show up, fake interest, go home. Nothing sparked wonder there. No one wanted to talk about the soul, about energy, about human potential. He was surrounded by small minds in a world full of big mysteries. As he walked, he pulled a plastic bag from his hoodie pocket, a half-ounce of pungent green weed, and expertly broke down a few nugs between his fingers. The scent stuck to the air like pine and gasoline, familiar and grounding. He rolled a joint with one hand while walking, sealing the edge with a quick lick and a press of his thumb. The wind danced through the streets with a strange moodiness, warm, but edged with an almost autumn-like bite. It was the kind of day that couldn't make up its mind, gloomy, heavy with clouds that threatened rain, but holding back. Leaves fluttered on the sidewalk. The occasional rustle of a distant lawnmower hummed in the background, but otherwise it was still. Scene 2, entering the wooded path behind the neighborhood. Raymond's steps slowed as he reached the end of the block. Tucked between two aging homes, one with a leaning wooden fence painted sky blue and flaking, the other with a quiet porch swing that hadn't moved in weeks, was the entrance to a narrow wooded path. It wasn't official. There were no signs, no lights. Just two leaning trees creating a crooked gateway into the woods, and a dirt trail cutting through wild grass. He stepped into it without hesitation. The change was immediate. The suburban world behind him was swallowed by trees that arched overhead like a cathedral ceiling. The wind picked up slightly, brushing the treetops and making them hiss. The path was muddy in some places, dry and cracked in others, with occasional footprints from people who'd come this way before, but not many. The deeper he walked, the more the noise of the neighborhood fell away. It was just him, the wind, and the soft sizzle of the joint in his fingers. Raymond took a drag and let the smoke fill his lungs. It expanded in his chest like warmth, like clarity. He exhaled slowly and watched the smoke blend with the breath of the woods. He could feel the trees listening. Scene 3, crossing into Red Cherry Hood. The trail ended abruptly, spitting him out onto cracked pavement at the edge of another world, Red Cherry Hood. Just across the city line, it looked close on a map but felt miles away in spirit. Red Cherry Hood wore its age and pressure out loud. The houses were tightly packed and close to the sidewalk, with low metal fences wrapped around patchy lawns. Walls were tagged with sharp, looping graffiti, layers of names and street legends painted over each other. Some homes had boarded windows or bent gutters that hadn't seen repair in years. Lawns were either dead dry or wildly overgrown. Sidewalks here were broken in places, weeds pushing through like the earth itself was rebelling. Where Raymond's neighborhood was muted and stagnant, Red Cherry was alive in a different way, gritty, unpredictable, and tense. People didn't walk here for leisure. They moved with a purpose. Or they stayed on porches with arms crossed, watching. Raymond didn't flinch. He walked calmly, the joint between his fingers still lit. As he passed a row of homes, he felt the eyes. Some curious. Most hostile. Suspicion clung to the air like dust. Even the air smelled different here, less like fresh grass and asphalt, more like oil, metal, and smoke. A man standing in front of a crooked chain-link fence was watering his lawn with too much aggression, the hose sweeping wildly across the dry yellow grass. As Raymond passed, the man flicked the hose up, shooting a fine mist of water across Raymond's chest. Raymond didn't stop. He didn't even flinch. "You know you're gonna overwater your grass," he said with calm sarcasm, voice low and even. "Looks like it's about to rain soon." He kept walking, leaving the man scowling in his wake. Scene 4, approaching the main road and the next forest. The sidewalk sloped down gently toward the main road, a wide strip of faded asphalt with barely visible lane markers. On one side, red cherry hood, loud and looming behind him. On the other, another vast wall of trees, older, taller, darker. There were no signs or city markers. Just a narrow space between two black pines, barely wide enough for a person to walk through. It looked more like a tear in the world than a path, an invitation, or a warning. Raymond stood at the curb, smoke trailing from the end of his joint, the wind tugging lightly at his hoodie. The hum of a car in the distance barely registered. His gaze locked on the woods ahead. There was something in them, he didn't know what yet, but he could feel it. The forests in his town always went deeper than the maps suggested. They lined the city like veins, leading to places most people didn't bother exploring. But Raymond wasn't most people. He didn't want escape, he wanted understanding. He crossed the street. And the trees waited. Scene, roadside confrontation vs. forest escape. Raymond stood at the edge of the road, 1 foot already in the grass, the joint burning between his fingers. He brought it to his lips again, his inhale deep and intentional, like someone pulling in not just smoke, but peace. The earthy taste filled his lungs as his chest rose slowly. He held the smoke inside, letting it press against his ribs as he stared across the road into the shadowy treeline. The forest was a sanctuary. A sacred in-between. Out here, in these endless stretches of green, he didn't feel like a prisoner under invisible eyes, city cameras, neighbors, judgment, fear. Nature didn't ask questions. But just as his second foot reached the other side of the road, an electric whir rose behind him. "Hey!" barked a voice, sharp and commanding. "Get over here. Now." Raymond stopped, turning his head slowly. Behind him, a squat, boxy police interceptor had glided up silently, one of the new electric models. The city badge on its side gleamed under the heavy sky. The window was rolled down, and inside sat a mountain of a man, pale skin, 280 pounds of muscle jammed into a too-tight tactical vest, tattoos snaking up both forearms. A black tribal piece wrapped around one bicep like a serpent. Another red order above all scrawled in thick Gothic script across his neck. His head was completely shaved, jaw square and bristled with 5 o'clock stubble. This was Officer Manning, and he looked like a man who lifted weights just to take out his anger in public. Raymond didn't move. He stood still in the middle of the road, his hoodie fluttering slightly in the breeze. The joint glowed orange between his fingers. "I said, get over here," Manning repeated, slamming the gear into park with a metallic click. His voice boomed from his chest, and the cop car groaned slightly as he leaned toward the door. Raymond took one final drag from his joint, deep and controlled, and walked slowly toward the car, never taking his eyes off the officer. He didn't exhale. Not yet. Manning's eyes narrowed. "Where you headed, huh?" His voice had the slight rasp of someone who smoked too many cigars and didn't believe in filters. "You about to go into those woods?" Raymond said nothing. Just looked at him. "I asked you a question," Manning growled. "That's city property. Just because it ain't been sold yet doesn't mean it's for hiking, hippie boy. You planning on trespassing?" Still silent. Raymond's lungs began to burn slightly. The smoke inside was getting stale, but he held it in anyway. Manning sneered. "Oh, I get it. You're one of those. The earth belongs to everyone types, huh?" Raymond finally spoke, voice calm but firm. I believe nature belongs to the people. The planet wasn't born with a fence around it. As he spoke, a wisp of smoke escaped from the corner of his mouth, trailing upward like incense. Manning's expression twisted instantly. Hey! The officer snapped. What the hell is that? You been smoking? Let me see your hands. Drop it, now. He yanked the door open, one heavy boot hitting the pavement with a thud. Raymond didn't wait. In a blur, he turned and bolted straight into the woods, the smoke finally bursting from his lungs as he hit full sprint. The forest swallowed him up in seconds. Stop. Get back here. Manning shouted, already several steps behind. But he didn't chase. He stood at the edge of the woods, breathing heavy and fuming. Whatever. Stupid little punk. He walked back to his car and slammed the door. Dumbass, he muttered, jabbing the comms on his dash. Unit 4-2, we got a teenage male headed into Sector 9 forest, blue hoodie, about 6 foot, skinny. Smoking weed. Ran in when I approached. Didn't pursue, he's just a stoner kid. A moment passed before another voice came through the radio, this one slightly older, calmer. That's right near where we found blood last month. Thought it was a cougar or black bear. Still didn't find the body. If he went in there, he might not be alone. Manning raised an eyebrow. Seriously? Yeah. We never confirmed what it was, but those woods ain't normal. Best to let him come out on his own. I'll send a unit to wait near the East Trail exit. Manning grunted. Whatever. He ain't my problem anymore. The police cruiser rolled away, its quiet hum fading back toward the city streets. Scene, deep in the woods. Raymond ran for nearly 500 yards, his breath steady but focused, his feet pounding against pine needles and packed dirt. He didn't even look back until the trees had begun to surround him completely, thick trunks rising like columns in an ancient cathedral. He ducked behind a log and peered back toward the road. Through a break in the foliage, he saw the black and white cruiser slowly pulling away, its lights off. Only then did he relax. He stood upright, dusted off his hoodie, and looked down at the burned-out roach between his fingers. He flicked it into the underbrush and pulled out his stash again, kneeling near a mossy rock. His fingers worked quickly, breaking up more buds, grinding them in his palm. The scent of weed mixed with fresh bark and loamy earth. As he rolled, he took a deep breath. This was what he loved. Not the chase, not the cop, but the silence. The freedom. Already, the sound of the road was gone, tucked away behind walls of trees. The only thing he could hear now was the whisper of wind through branches and the rustle of the undergrowth. He looked up and smiled slightly. Squirrels darted from tree to tree overhead, chattering lightly. A blue jay shrieked in the distance, while smaller birds flitted from branch to branch. The air smelled alive, damp leaves, bark, old water. Stillness settled all around him, but it wasn't empty. It was the kind of stillness that feels like a breath held by the world itself. Raymond sat down cross-legged in the grass, his second joint finished and ready to spark. He was alone. But for the first time all day, he felt seen. Seen, through the woods, toward the river. The forest thickened as Raymond walked farther in, the tall oaks and twisted pines crowding closer together like walls closing around him. Branches creaked in the wind overhead, and the earthy scent of damp bark, moss, and fresh leaves filled the air. He was high, but not high enough, not for this kind of thinking. Not for this kind of day. From the canopy above, red cardinals flitted from branch to branch in flashes of crimson. A pair of cedar waxwings chased each other in loops, chirping like they'd forgotten the world below. But what caught Raymond's eye was the golden eagle, perched stoically high on a branch like a statue made of bronze and fire. It wasn't often you saw a bird like that out here, especially not one so still. It was watching him. Raymond stared at it for a long moment. The way its head cocked. The way it didn't blink. He blinked instead. Man. I must not have smoked enough yet, he muttered to himself, pulling his pack from his hoodie pocket. He crouched on a patch of moss and unrolled a paper. 3 joints. That should carry him into evening. His fingers worked fast, rolling tight cones with the precision of someone who'd been doing it for over half his life, because he had. Head started smoking when he was 10 years old, swiping his cousin's stash during loud family cookouts when no one was paying attention. What started as rebellion became therapy. It numbed the yelling at home, softened the constant weight in his chest, dulled the hollow halls of school. As he sparked the first of the new joints, it crackled lightly, the cherry glowing in the dim forest light. He took a slow, lung-deep inhale, closing his eyes as the smoke coated his lungs like a warm blanket. Shit, he exhaled. That's better. The wind whispered through the leaves again, and Raymond thought about high school, the last few months in particular. His grades had tanked. Motivation? Gone. And then there was Danielle, the girl he thought would stick by him. She left him for a senior with a fake car and real money. He didn't blame her, but the sting still followed him like a shadow. Even now, in the forest. Still. He didn't feel weak. Not anymore. The pain was there, but so was his strength. He knew who he was, even if the world hadn't figured it out yet. As he walked, the woods began to change. The trees were denser here, more aged, their trunks wide and rough like elephant skin. Moss clung to bark. Ferns blanketed the ground. Then he saw it, a black eye spray painted on the trunk of an enormous tree. It was rough, hand-done, and weathered by time. A single eye with thick lashes and no pupil, staring outward in crude permanence. The tree towered above the rest like a giant, the branches at the top forming a crooked silhouette. There was something at the top. A lump? A shape? A nest? Raymond squinted. Probably just more tree. He took another long drag from the joint, held it, and let the smoke trickle out his nostrils. Just then, something rushed overhead, a whoosh of black feathers and wind pressure. A black-winged bird dove just inches above his head, its talons clicking in the air as it passed. Shit, damn. Raymond ducked, heart thudding. He looked up in time to see the bird circling back into the trees. "I'm in their mating grounds, huh? That's on me." He kept walking, muttering to himself as he exhaled. Can't even get high in peace without territorial wildlife throwing hands. This forest had always been a place of freedom for him. A place to escape his mother's yelling, his uncle's judgments, his stepfather's silence. Out here, he could walk for hours, smoking, thinking, letting the world fall away. He knew these woods. Or so he thought. Scene, the river behind the train station. After nearly an hour of walking, the trees began to part. He heard it before he saw it, a low, steady rush of water, mingled with the faint clank of metal and occasional human voices. Raymond stepped out of the brush and into a clearing beside the river, which flowed like a long silver ribbon behind the old train station. Rusted train cars were scattered along the rail line, some covered in graffiti, some broken down like they hadn't moved in years. Rail workers in neon vests moved in the distance, tightening bolts, inspecting wheels, chatting with the disinterest of people who'd been doing the same job for too long. Beyond the tracks was the main road, and just before the lot of the station, tucked under a crooked utility pole, was a black and white police interceptor. Raymond's eyes narrowed. It was Officer Manning, posted up outside the lot, parked where he could overlook the forest edge with a mounted zoom cam. Raymond ducked behind a low shrub. The smoke still lingered in his mouth. He didn't exhale yet. Scene, Officer Manning, radio dispatch. Inside the car, Manning's tattooed fingers gripped the radio handset. Unit 4-2 to base, he said, voice gruff and tired. We got no visual on the suspect yet, but I'm by the old train yard, positioned near the clearing. A pause. Static buzzed. Then, copy, 4-2. Be advised, last month's animal incident was in that area. Blood trail ended near the river. No recovered body. Manning squinted out the windshield. You saying the kid's walking through a kill zone? Affirmative. Unknown species. Possibly bear or cougar. Patrol recommends visual confirmation only, no pursuit. Manning grunted.
Yeah.
No shit. He started the car, rolling slowly through the gravel of the train station lot, waving casually at a pair of workers. One of them, a skinny guy with grease on his vest, waved back. Manning leaned out the window. Hey, he barked. Seen a teenager? Blue hoodie. Slim, about 6 feet. Might be acting sketchy. The worker scratched his chin. Maybe. Thought I saw someone by the trees earlier, but didn't get a good look. Manning nodded. If you see him again, keep your mouth shut and call this number. The gravel crunched lightly under the quiet weight of the black Interceptor EV as Officer Manning pulled up to the familiar gap in the trees, a narrow breach where the woods opened just enough for an old deer path to snake inward. The clouds above had begun thickening, rolling over the late afternoon sky like a gray wool blanket. The light dimmed, and the tall trees ahead looked darker than they should have for this time of day. He threw the car in park, unbuckled with a grunt, and stepped out slowly, one boot at a time planting on the forest's edge. The warm buzz of the electric motor faded behind him as he scanned the foliage. Silence. He walked forward a few paces, hand resting on his belt, eyes darting across the undergrowth like a hawk circling over prey. Just as he was about to step past the first veil of branches, something faint caught his eye near the mossy base of a tree. Still glowing faintly, resting crooked in the dirt, was the smoldering end of a joint. He crouched beside it, grinning to himself with a crooked smirk. Little bastard couldn't help himself, Manning muttered, his voice low and dry. He plucked the end with 2 fingers, inspecting it, the ember fading as it curled smoke between his knuckles. He stood again, brushing off his knees and glancing into the woods. You're probably gonna get eaten by a bobcat, Raymond. He chuckled, flicking the stub into the leaves. Or maybe a goddamn bear. Be a hell of a write-up. He stared for a moment longer. A wind passed through the trees, cool and carrying a strange, earthy scent. Something old. Something wet. His grin faded slightly. Scoffing, he shook his head and turned back toward the Interceptor. Screw it. I'll just catch him on the other side. He knew the other end of the trail, where the old maintenance road curved around and dipped behind the woods, head wait for Raymond there. No reason to trudge through wet brush after a burnout who always came out the same 2 or 3 exit points. Deeper in, Raymond. Raymond had walked further than usual, feeling the sweet weightlessness of the 3 joints he'd burned through earlier still lingering in his chest and legs. The woods embraced him like a second skin, thick and familiar, the branches stretching overhead like archways in a forgotten cathedral. Each footstep fell softly on the moss-laced dirt, and his mind drifted like smoke curling into the air. He paused under a twisted birch tree and reached into his hoodie pocket, pulling out the last bit of weed and his rolling papers. As he walked, his fingers worked by muscle memory, tucking and shaping the next joint like a ritual. No real destination today, he thought. There was a broken-down pavilion deeper in these woods, all splintered beams and a roof choked in ivy. He usually ended up there. A good place to sit and think. To meditate, when he was in the mood. But lately, things had been still. Nothing unusual. No signs. No animals. No whispers from the trees like he sometimes imagined. The air was getting darker now, 2 clouds rolling over the sky like bruises. Raymond glanced back one last time through the shadowed clearing in the woods. The distant red-blue flicker of police lights faded behind the trees as Officer Manning pulled away from the train station and drove off into the city night. A small grin touched Raymond's face. Dumbass, he muttered, flicking the last inch of his joint into the brush and stuffing his hands into his hoodie as he trudged deeper into the woods. The path narrowed. Branches tangled like skeletal fingers, clawing at his clothes. Leaves crackled beneath his feet. The further Raymond got from the opening, the colder the air became, like the forest was slowly closing its jaws behind him. Meanwhile, Officer Manning's Interceptor rumbled through the backroads of the city. His thumb flicked the radio mic as he coasted past boarded-up warehouses and old lots wrapped in rusted chain link. His tone was dry, impatient. Dispatch, Unit 43 here. I'm back on patrol. Kid's not at the station anymore, probably wandered deeper into the woods. A crackle of static, then, copy that, 43. No major incidents right now, just routine calls. Stay on him, make sure he's safe. No aggression. Manning scoffed and rolled his eyes, gripping the wheel tighter.
Yeah.
Baby the burnout. Copy that. He released the mic with a click and accelerated down the road, the tires grumbling on worn pavement. Old Industrial Drive came up on the left, just a sliver of broken asphalt curling into the woods. He turned onto it without slowing, punching the gas to 45 miles per hour. The road twisted unnaturally sharp between overgrowth and old drainage ditches. Faded yellow signs warned of curves too tight for city traffic. He muttered to himself, "Goddamn overgrown maze." The turn came fast. Too fast. Whump. Something struck the front of the car. The entire interceptor jolted violently. A sickening crunch echoed beneath the floorboards, followed by a rolling thud-thud-thud. The cruiser swerved slightly, but Manning corrected, braking hard until he came to a grinding halt. His breath caught in his chest. What the hell? He threw the gear into park and jumped out, gravel crunching under his boots. The front of the car was streaked with blood, not just splatter, but long, greasy smears across the headlights and grille. The bumper was dented, metal bowed inwards like something massive had slammed into it. The windshield was intact, but the hood had a twisted crease. He walked around back and froze. A massive creature lay sprawled in the middle of the road. At first glance, it looked like a wolf, only. It wasn't. Its limbs were too long, its fur mottled and dark with blood, and its torso was nearly the size of a deer. One yellow eye still glinted in the dark, lifeless. Manning knelt beside it, inspecting it. Too far south for wolves. Must be a damn coyote, he whispered. A freakishly big one. He shook his head and grabbed the intercom. Dispatch, I just struck a coyote. Big bastard. Minimal vehicle damage, just dented the front. Continuing on the kid's trail. Another officer's voice cut in, "That's coming out of your bonus, Manning. That's a brand new cruiser." Manning chuckled bitterly.
Yeah.
I'll wash the blood off later. Right now, I got a ghost to chase. He climbed back into the car, slammed the door, and gunned it, tires skidding slightly as he barreled deeper down the winding road. Back in the woods, darkness had swallowed the world. Clouds snuffed out what remained of what remained of twilight. The air felt thick, cold, and dry, like something ancient stirred in the shadows. Raymond puffed the last of his second joint and let the smoke drift lazily from his lips. Snap. His heart jumped. The sound came from behind. He turned sharply. Nothing. Just trees. Dead quiet. But then, movement. A subtle shifting of weight in the brush. A shuffle of leaves. Raymond squinted through the darkness and spotted it, up on the ridge, nestled between two trees, a figure. Tall. Hulking. Still. But it wasn't fully hidden. It moved. Just slightly. Enough to catch the gleam of faint eyes, wide and pale like glinting marbles in the gloom. Raymond's chest tightened. Hell no. He turned and ran. Sprinting full speed through the overgrown trail, his breath coming in sharp bursts. Branches lashed his face. He didn't look back. He didn't have to. He ran a full mile, stumbling out into the clearing at the backside of Industrial Drive, where the dirt road opened onto a forgotten lot. Looming in the dim field ahead stood the old linen factory, a decaying giant wrapped in vines and rust. Raymond collapsed near the front of it, doubled over and wheezing, hands on his knees. The air around him turned colder, sharper. Wind creaked through the busted metal siding. Shattered windows stared blankly down at him like hollow eyes. He turned to glance back at the woods. Snap. There it was. 100 yards behind him. The same shape. But closer now. Bigger. He could see the eyes again, glowing faintly. And the silhouette, it didn't move like a man. It was too smooth. Too inhuman. Hell no. Raymond shouted, voice cracking. He bolted toward the factory, but his foot caught on a jagged metal pipe half buried in the dirt. Slice. Pain exploded through his foot. He hit the ground hard, crying out as blood began soaking his sock. His shoe tore open at the side, and a warm gush of blood spilled onto the gravel. Damn it! He cried, gritting his teeth. Trembling, he tore the sleeve off his hoodie, wrapped it around his foot, and tightened it with a groan. Then, a movement. The shape emerged from the woods, its height now unmistakable. A giant. A beast. Eyes burning pale. Raymond screamed. No. He limped, half-hopping, toward a metal side door swinging slightly open. He forced himself inside and slammed it shut, fumbling on the floor for anything to secure it. His hand grabbed a rusted steel rod, slicing open his palm. Blood dripped fast now. Come on, he hissed, jamming the rod into the door handles just as something slammed against it from the outside. The impact shook the frame. Bam. Bam. A massive paw slammed through the crack in the door. Fingers, 5 of them, but unnaturally long, coated in black fur and tipped in broken claws. The skin was grayish-black, and the hand alone looked the size of Raymond's chest. Holy, no. Raymond scrambled backward, blood trailing behind him as he limped into the deeper shadows of the factory. The interior was enormous. Steel support beams stretched into the dark like skeleton ribs. Machinery long dead sat covered in ivy and dust. Water dripped from broken pipes. Raymond stumbled up a crumbling stairwell, every step sending jolts of agony through his torn foot. He found a long, narrow hallway lined with peeling doors. At the end, he slipped into one and crawled beneath a collapsed pile of cloth and debris. The air was thick with mold and dust. Breathing was like swallowing.